And we are beginning the show today by looking at corn and soybean planting. And when it comes to planting, Nebraska is ahead of the 5-year average at 86% of corn and 71% of soybeans in the ground. For the country as a whole, 80% of corn and 61% of soybeans are planted. This all according to the latest crop progress report from the USDA. I was joined by North Dakota State University's Frayne Olson this week to talk about the corn and soybean markets. But we began with how some recent infrastructure issues are impacting agriculture. Frayne, I know you've been following a bridge issue out in Memphis that has slowed barge traffic and impacted shipments along the Mississippi River. What are the effects we're seeing with exports and grain prices?
Well, probably the biggest immediate effect would be some of the change in the basis levels. And again, the basis is really your local market trying to regulate the flow of grain. And so when the barge traffic was halted, obviously there was some of those barges were hauling grain down to the export markets. As a result, depending upon the timing and the arrival of the ocean vessels and the throughput time they needed, there's some of that grain had to be rerouted. They had to find an alternative route, find some alternative bushels to be able to fill, not knowing exactly how long the barge traffic would be halted. So there was a temporary spike in some of the basis levels at the export terminals, but this should be a short-term impact. As long as they now have reopened at least the barge traffic, the bridge is still closed, but the barge traffic has reopened. It will take a little bit of time to work through that backlog, but again, it wasn't shut down for an extended period of time, and so the system should be able to rework through that, and we should be able to stabilize. The bigger question, the longer-term question is this an indication of other problems that might be coming in the future? We've been talking about concerns about the aging of our locks and dams system along the major tributaries of the Mississippi as well as the main channel of the Mississippi. We rely on that for agricultural trade significantly for not only the grain movement from the middle of the country down to the ports, but also for fertilizer transportation from the ports back through the system, especially in the spring and the fall. So, this is one thing that we have been dealing with for a while with temporary shutdowns of the locks and dam system. This happened to be a bridge that's caused the difficulty. So where we go from here is really, in my mind, the bigger question.
And next up, as we take a look at planting progress and growing season, we've had some dryness in Nebraska, but from what I understand, fair share of concerns up your way in North Dakota too, right?
Absolutely, yep. When you look at both the drought monitor maps as well as additional soil moisture maps, up in our region, we're exceptionally dry. Now, fortunately, the forecast going for the next several days is to get some rainfall. We've been making very rapid planting progress, again, because it was so dry. We've had a little bit of a cool spring season, but that really hasn't impacted things tremendously. Soil temperatures are starting to rise. We've been making very rapid planting progress. The issue right now is a lot of that seed is sitting in dry dirt. We'd really like to have some rain showers come through to try and get a nice even stand, a good jump to the spring season. But unfortunately, because our subsoil is so dry, we're going to be battling this or living this rain shower to rain shower for an extended time. So this is something that is not going to go away quickly, and we're going to be talking about all summer long.
And Frayne, let me get a word in with you on wheat. We've got the lower dollar, corn prices, and winter wheat condition. Which of those are playing into the movements in the wheat market?
Yeah, so all of the above, right? The wheat complex as a class, a group of different types of wheat, spring wheat, winter wheat, the soft reds, as a class of wheat, we have adequate supplies. Unlike corn and soybeans where our ending stocks are starting to get tight, the market's getting a bit uncomfortable, we still have a very adequate supply base and reserve of wheat and wheat stocks. The other thing is we haven't seen the expansion of wheat export market like we did in the soybean and the corn market. So our wheat exports are good, but they're normal or typical. We're starting to get some yield reports now out of Kansas. The Kansas Wheat Tour is going on. It looks as though the Kansas wheat crop is going to be a very good crop this year, above average yields. We'll wait to see a little bit on what the quality profile is. There are some concerns about spring wheat. not only here in the United States, but also in Canada, because that dry area in North Dakota and Montana extends into Manitoba and Saskatchewan, which are major spring wheat as well as canola producing regions. So the wheat market is under a little bit different set of dynamics. As corn prices come up, wheat is an alternative feed source, in particular for poultry as well as the beef industry. The poultry folks can flip very quickly between feeding corn and feeding wheat. So when corn prices are high, the wheat market is impacted by the higher corn prices. When corn prices are relatively low, the wheat supply and demand conditions kind of do their own thing. So right now, the wheat market is following the corn market very, very closely because our supply and demand conditions in the wheat, we have adequate supplies right now. So we are looking to the corn market for direction, and we've seen that now. As corn prices have increased, we saw a rebound in wheat. Now, as corn prices have started to soften again, the wheat complex is starting to drop as well.
And a question I've been seeing from folks, and I want to get your take on it as well. Are the highs for corn and soybeans in, or is there more to come?
Well, that's a hotly debated topic. My personal bias, my personal opinion, as long as we get some typical rain showers, we get some typical growing season weather, I think the highs may have been posted. However, again, for corn and soybeans, our carryover stocks, our reserves are so tight. And even when you look into the forecasted 2021 numbers, we need an average yield or better to be able to meet the demand base that's currently forecasted. So this is going to be a hotly debated topic. If there's any kind of weather questions or concerns this summer, we can definitely see price spikes that will reach these levels or exceed them. So right now it's really driven by weather. If we have a typical season this year, I suspect we have seen the highs, but it's up to Mother Nature at this point.